Hello and welcome to another video dealing with topics related to health and wellness. Today's topic is going to be about our cosmology, and it's something that I've been very interested in for quite a while, and I wanted to take some time and to share my views about it. If this is something that you would find interesting hearing more about, if you have aspects of it you want to share, if you feel there's something that you want to challenge me on in terms of my view, but this is really meant to be a personal view. And I'll just say at this point right out, I use certain images here. I didn't check to see if they were copyrighted, so if anyone wants me to remove them or change them or give a credit, just let me know. I'm more than willing to do that. But today's video is about my view about our cosmology, and my question is, have we been told the truth? Is our cosmology really what it is? Now, here's a picture of me when I was young. I was getting ready to go out and sell Boy Cubs apples. Do that every year. And I remember that day and I had my photo taken. And the reason I put that up to here for you is that it is very important to me that back then I trusted everyone. And I didn't really question people if someone said something, unless it was like totally something, or if I knew that it was wrong, I wouldn't challenge it if I really didn't know. I was in a quest to learn. So I trusted my brothers, and when they explained to me about how Santa came and brought me my toys for Christmas, why would I doubt them? Why would I question it? But it was obviously a lie. And as I grew older, I began to be uncomfortable with those social lies, like about the Easter Bunny and about Santa Claus. And I'd modify them a bit to my nephews and nieces, and I would probably say something like, well, Santa's not a real person. Santa is really a spirit. Okay, and we talk about the spirit of Christmas, right? But as I got older, that feeling got stronger, that there was just something wrong. I wasn't getting answers, and I began to question and question and question. And it wasn't until much later in life that I began to, and this is mainly through social media, began to see that there are other people feeling the same way I felt. So let's dig into this. Where do we live? What is our cosmology? I think it's like living in a very, very elaborate machine. A machine that's extremely accurate. Everything in our reality is precision. And we can set our clocks by the movement of the celestial bodies. So it's very accurate. There's nothing random about it. Even things like solstice and the comets is a good example. Those are on a period. Those are on a schedule. The other thing about our environment is that there's system to it. There's a systematic pattern to it. And again, I know I was told as a kid that this all resulted from random activity. I personally cannot go with that story. Like Santa, I don't think it's real. Because you take one cell from any living organism, and it's able to reproduce into a full version of it. Any living organism in this reality can reproduce from a single cell. And that's pretty amazing. Okay, that you start with a single cell. You don't end up with a monkey if you start it with a giraffe. You end up with a giraffe. But it goes further than that. In this grand machine, everything is conserved. All matter is conserved. You can change it. You can burn a lump of coal, but you end up with the same amount of matter at the other end. maybe in a different form. And this is true of energy too. No energy can be lost. So we're in a container, we're in a system where all matter, all energy is only converted, but it's all conserved. So let's take a look at our history. Where did these pyramids come from? We get bits and pieces of information, but if you talk to the locals who live near these pyramids in South America, they'll admit they didn't build them. And in some of the sites where there are pyramids, there's evidence of different styles of architecture on top of old architecture. If you look at the pyramids in Egypt, I personally don't think the people who live there now built those pyramids. They know about the pyramids, but I don't think they know how to build them. If you ask them to build, can anyone build a pyramid today? So these historical cultures appear to be gone, and we know nothing about them. Even if you just go back to our Renaissance period, things from that period cannot be reproduced today. So it's not so much that the art is lost, but the ability to produce it is gone. So in this picture, for an example, this painting, the paint that was used to create this painting is unknown. It cannot be manufactured today. We don't have the capabilities to produce those kinds of oils to make those kinds of paintings. So it's a lost art form. Looking further, we can see technology. There's evidence that there was technology in the past that far exceeds our current technology. So here's an analog piece of machinery that predicts the location of all of the planets, the sun and moon, their phases, the eclipses, the various stages, and much, much more. It's a complete computerized version of our cosmology. It's over 2,000 years old. It was found off the coast of Greece, and they backwards engineered it and created a working model of it today, or closely facsimile of a working model. And not only was it accurate 2,000 years ago, but it's accurate today. So this is something that's unbelievable. It's more accurate than the most accurate Swiss-made watch that man has today. I have a feeling that we're just really spaced out. And if I put my tinfoil hat on, I begin to feel that, maybe that was deliberate. Maybe we're not being told everything. So let's just dig into it and see if there is some parts of our cosmology that I think we've been misled on. And maybe not deliberately, or maybe deliberately. So let's take a look at space. But when I do this, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to stick to laws of science that will give us an understanding of whether something is true or false, or to what extent. I'll stay away from theories, because theories try to explain why things happen, and theories can change. Theories are meant to be changed. They're just a hypothesis. What I'm going to stick to is laws of science that are based on natural phenomena within our reality. An idea of a law is that it remains a law for all of time in any location. It doesn't vary with location. So anywhere in our cosmology, if it's a law, it will be true there. That's kind of important that is in fact the case. Here's one that's one of my favorite. The idea that space is a vacuum and that there's nothing in it. Now, there's a reason why we've been educated to believe that space is a vacuum and empty. I won't get into it now, but this is another whole video about why at the turn of the century we were convinced that space was empty. There were debates that happened around the late 1800s, early 1900s. But there's a law that states that this can't be true. The laws of thermodynamics state that you can't have a vacuum. It's impossible. There will always be something in it. And this one law really challenges the concept of a space with a vacuum. It's a law. Similarly, there's this whole idea that objects that we look up in the night sky are light years, millions and millions and millions and millions of miles away, these tremendous distances and sizes. I believe there's a law that says that this can't be true. If we see something in the sky, we see it based on the inverse square law of light transmission. And this doesn't change because you're looking at a planet or a star or whatever it is, the object in the sky. This is true wherever and however you're looking at something. And as you can see here, from a light source, every increase of distance, you have to square the distance, right? So you divide the energy by the square of the distance. And you can see here, if you started at distance 1 and you have 1 unit, by the time you go to double that distance, go to distance 2, you have a fourth of the amount of energy or visibility. And if you go one more step to 3 times the distance, you end up to 9 times less, a ninth of what you originally had. So it doesn't take very long, if you talk about distances that are millions of miles away, that the thing would become, invisible. It would just disappear. So our night skies should be literally dark. So this just tells me something about this whole idea of vacuums in space and distances, that I tend to fall back on our more ancient cultures that I think had technology, had abilities, had knowledge that we are not exposed to or have been in some way kept from. So if you look at the Egyptians, and I talked about the Egyptian technology and the building the pyramids, but there are other cultures, the Incas, the Navajo, they all had a geocentric type of cosmology that was very close and intimate, except for our current NASA. I don't agree with NASA. And when I go forward and do more videos on our cosmology, I'm going to be looking at it from a geocentric, close and intimate version of our cosmology, and perhaps comparing it with our NASA heliocentric model, maybe comparing it, but in reality, I think the truth is that it's much more grounded. Let me give you another example. When I was young, growing up in school, I was only taught 3 states of matter, and perhaps you're the same. I was only told that something is a solid, like a block of ice. The ice can melt and turn to water. It can be a liquid. And you could boil the water and it can become a gas. And that's where the transformation of matter ended. I believe we've been kind of railroaded into believing that that is the fact. But really, there's a 4th state of matter. And I can remember asking my school teachers, asking my brothers, asking my parents, asking my school teachers, what is fire? What is fire? And no one could answer it. And they just sort of look at me, well, fire is fire. Well, fire is plasma, which is the 4th state of matter. And about 15 years ago, I saw something that said that plasma is prolific in our cosmology. It's everywhere. And one example of plasma, of course, is a lightning that you see in the night sky. But our solar system is full of plasma. And if you want to learn more about our universe, go to the electricuniverse.com, And they believe that plasma is a major part of our universe, but it was never talked about. But it gets worse than that. Because if you look at the whole idea of moving from a solid to a liquid to a gas to a plasma, there's a component, there's something missing here, because these do not exist in a vacuum. As mentioned earlier, the whole idea that we live in a vacuum, because there is something else going on. And modern day science will tell us that our ordinary matter, solids, liquid, gas, and plasma, only make about 5% of what is out there in our cosmology. So there's something else. Now, what was debated in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and removed from the states of matter is something called ether. So there's really 5 states, and prior to the early 1900s, you could get information, and scientists studied this quite more, but it was removed. So plasma on the far left, fire, and ether on the far right were removed to give us just earth, water, and air. And you can see that there were geometric symbols, there were stylistic symbols for them, the circular being for ether and the triangle for fire. And then there were colors assigned to these 5 states of matter. Why, excuse me, why were these excluded? Why were these 2 excluded? Well, because fire is really plasma, which is our energy. So the knowledge of how energy is stored, and ether tells you about communications. That's why there's something called an ether net. Everything resides within the ether, so it is the material that links everything together. Anyway, that's my theory about it, is that our educational system has in some way been rigged. And there's some very good writings about that, and you could do some research on your own. And again, that's another whole video that we can do. Well, as one example is our medical industry, owned and purchased by the Rockefeller Institute family, who wanted to transition holistic medicine into pharmaceutical-based medicine. And they did that by buying all of the universities in America and eventually the world. So any university that wants to teach medicine has to teach Rockefeller-based pharmaceutical medicine. So that's just one example. This tells you how our whole globalization of the world and our understanding of our cosmology has been controlled by our educational system and by our society. Well, that's it today. Just get this out to you. If you found this interesting, if you'd like me to dig deeper, you could just go to buymeacoffee.com/SD Oliver, S for Steve, D for Douglas, Oliver. Buy me a coffee, and that will get me going and then keep me going. I'd like to get more up-to-date equipment. I'd like to also perhaps have people on to discuss these topics with me. But in any event, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch and comment, hopefully. And I will do more. If you want it, I'll produce it. Okay, have a great day, and hopefully see you soon.